So back in 2019, it was a pretty exciting time for Bait Finesse, and that's because we had several quality, dedicated, budget BFS reels released on AliExpress in a really short amount of time. Now it started with the legendary Fishband GH100, a reel that copied the SHIMANO ALDEBARAN BFS right down to its braking system. And then shortly after that, the Surnoya Spirit Fox came out, and it had the lightest spool of any Chinese BFS reel yet. And then shortly after that, the Fishband PW100 came out, which was the first Chinese BFS reel that came in at under 5 ounces. And then a pro version of the P100 came out shortly after that as well. So basically we had an explosion of quality performing budget BFS reels coming out of China in a really short amount of time. But other than the KASTKING Zephyr, it's actually been pretty quiet since then, with no new BFS reels coming out that were actually improving on specs. But now, to me, it feels a lot like 2019 because we have had several new BFS reels being released in a real short amount of time that actually have specifications that seem to bridge the gap between the Chinese BFS reels and the top JDM reels. Starting with this reel right here, the Fishband Clamber Hyper Micro. Now when the Hyper Micro came out in, I guess, early 2021, this reel was really groundbreaking amongst Chinese BFS reels in the fact that it had an aluminum frame and it was sporting a spool that was lighter than only but one or two BFS spools in history. But it came with a lot of high quality components, clicking drag, clicking spool tension, drag star. Very high spec, but it also had a high price. But then came this reel, the Shanghai Lingle. Now the thing about this reel is that it sports a super lightweight spool that's just as light, if not a hair lighter, than the Clamber Hyper Micro, but it mated that spool with the imitation Shimano FTB dynamic brakes. And I've proven that this reel can cast a 1.5 gram lure easily and pretty good distance, and so could the Clamber Hyper Micro. But yeah, you can see that it's got a lot of high-end looking components, a lot of things that you would normally upgrade your stock BFS reel to, like the smaller aluminum knobs, carbon fiber handle, etc, etc. But yeah, the Shanghai Lingle. So about the same time that the Lingle was released, this reel was released as well. The Kyorim Black Knight 2. And if the specs are true on this reel, then this reel will actually be the highest spec BFS reel in history, at least when it comes to the most important specs. But there's only one way to find out if that's true or not. So let's get to this unboxing. All right. The time, and let's check this reel out. There's schematics and there's foam padding underneath as well, so very nice that they protected the reel with the foam padding just like Abu Garcia does. But yeah, let's get to this Black Knight 2. Check this thing out. This is another one of those reels that is sporting, I guess, the iridescent rainbow paint scheme, which I like to call it, that changes colors whenever you rotate the reel around. Looks like you can see blue, purple, well, just basically blue and purple. But yeah, check this reel out. Feels super lightweight as well. Check out these knobs. Feels smooth enough. Alright, I'm going to inspect this reel and take some notes, and I will be right back. Okay, so I'm done with my inspection, and before we begin, in case you guys were wondering why this is called the Black Knight 2 and where is the Black Knight 1, well, unfortunately I never bought the Black Knight 1 reel. But the good news is my friend Jimmy over at Roar Fishing did, and he actually released a couple of videos on that reel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a link to his videos pinned in my comment section if you want to go check those videos out, because I believe the Black Knight 1 is still going to be for sale alongside this reel, but this reel is more expensive. But we'll go over the price a little bit later. But I will say that I believe it is more expensive for a reason, and that's because when I was checking this reel out, I really like it. There are a lot of nice little details here that really make me like this reel. And if the specifications are correct and true, then this reel has the potential to be able to beat out this reel, the Alpha's Air TW, when it comes to casting the 1 gram trout magnet. But more on that later. Now this reel is very small, very tiny. I'm not sure how big the Black Knight 1 was, but that means we're gonna get into some size comparisons, mainly against other AliExpress reels. But as you can see, I already brought the Alphas out. This reel looks to be about the same size as the Alphas. And palming them, they palm a little bit different. In fact, I think the Black Knight 2 actually palms smaller than the Alphas. It is very low profile. I think it's actually lower than the Alphas, or very similar. It looks lower to me. But here it is compared to the Fishband GH100, and the GH100 looks massive by comparison. And it is definitely taller than the Black Knight 2, way taller in fact. The camera will focus there. Yeah, much taller than the Black Knight. Now here it is up against the Sornoy Spirit Fox. And the Spirit Fox is noticeably bigger as well, a lot wider as you can see. And it is slightly taller than the Black Knight 2 as well. Now here it is up against the Fishband PW100, which I believe shares the same frame and body for the most part as the Spirit Fox. And you can see it is much wider and a little bit taller. But the PW100 is one of my favorite Chinese BFS reels so far. Alright, now here it is up against the KASTKING Zephyr. And the Zephyr is a noticeably bigger reel. Wider, maybe a little bit longer. Definitely taller. But yeah, that's how it is against the KASTKING Zephyr. And now it's time to compare it up against the new generation AliExpress reels, starting with the Clamber Hyper Micro. It looks like the Clamber is a little bit bigger. Now my camera's weird. If I swap sides, one reel may look bigger than the other when they're actually closer to the same size, but yeah, the Clamber is definitely a little bit bigger, it's wider, and I don't know, pretty close in height. But yeah, that's the size comparison against the Clamber Hyper Micro. And last but not least, the Shanghe Lingle. The Shanghe Lingle it's just bigger in every way. It's way wider. It is, I don't know, they're pretty similar in height. The Black Knight 2 is definitely lower. But yeah, that's how the Black Knight compares against its new generation competition as far as size goes. Okay, so I pulled the box back out, and I'm gonna let you guys just read off the box all the specs on this reel. Let me see here. A6061 T6 lightweight aluminum spool, tournament grade carbon disc drag washer, 30 steps micro tune magnetic control, advanced magnetic control system, 10+1 ultra smooth Japan ball bearing, one touch quick access side cover, oversized brass drive pinion gear, audible click star drag, the design of taper outlet, unloading alarm system. But wait, there's even more. Okay, 11 bearings total, 7.1:1 gear ratio. That's the retrieval rate there. 11-pound drag, which is acceptable for BFS. But check that out. It's supposed to be 4.76 ounces or 135 grams. And there's the line capacity there. But now that we got the specs out of the way, let's just go over the features. Because this Black Knight 2 has a lot. Now, this reel is made of carbon, the frame and the side plates. As you can see, the frame itself is black, while the side plates are that pretty iridescent purpley blue color. But the frame has actually got a lot of, I guess, chiseling. As you can see, a lot of details at the top there. And your thumb fits right on that little, I guess, cutout section there. Let's check out this carbon fiber handle here. Now, I was comparing the length of this handle to several other reels, and I'm pretty sure it's 80 millimeters. But as you can see, it's very, I don't know how to describe it. It's very thin. It's thin here, and then it tapers off real quick, making the arms very thin. But at the same time, it's actually pretty thick and beefy in width. So if you compare this carbon fiber handle to the one on the lingual, you can definitely see the difference there between the two, hopefully. And the handle on the Black Knight 2 looks more aftermarket and trick to me. Looks more quality. Now obviously you see these knobs here, and these are blatant replicas of DAIWA's knobs that they put on their T3 and SS Air. In fact, I pulled out my SS Air and take a look at them. They are identical. Of course, China is known for, I guess, replicating intellectual property, so them copying these knobs is not surprising. And they even are giving us that raw marbled, I guess, Zion look that the SS Air's knobs have as well. Now these knobs, I'm not a huge fan of. I usually fish these knobs like this. I'll put my thumb and fingertip on the smooth section and I'll fish it like this instead of having it in the, I guess, the cutout section holding the metal part. But they designed this for you to be able to detect bites better. Now check out that drag star. It's got a lot of nice detail to it. They've definitely removed material to save some weight. And then of course everything clicks. So the drag star clicks, not a very loud click, but it feels solid. Turning the drag star definitely feels solid, and more solid than some of its competitors. Now the spool tension there, it does click as well, but unfortunately it's got kind of that doyo vague soft clicks to it. You can barely feel the clicks, and you can barely hear the clicks as well, but that's not that big of a deal to me. And yes, the drag does click as well, meaning if a fish is strong enough to pull line out, the drag will click. And yeah, there's just a lot of details in this reel. You got your cutouts right there. You got your little aluminum trim piece with some lettering there. What does it say? Design from Black Knight, I guess. Your gear ratio is right there. And lightweight design. And on the handle it says High Star. I don't know if that's a aftermarket company in China that makes products or real parts, but yeah, more writing down there. So definitely a good looking reel. A lot of little intricate details to it, and it feels solid. Even though this reel is supposed to be super lightweight, it feels really solid, probably because it's so compact. But it is very smooth. It feels smoother than the lingual and the clamber. At least my reel does. Of course, quality control for reels coming out of China is going to be suspect, so my reel might feel great, but the next reel may not feel as great. That's just a chance you take when you are ordering things from China. But yeah, it's got a little knight logo right here. Brave, fearless. There's your brake adjustment that clicks. Now the brake adjustment doesn't feel that refined, but oh well. Now check this out. Now remember how the lingual had that huge triangle line guide right here? Hopefully you guys can see that. Check out the line guide for the Black Knight 2. That is pretty close to a T-wing if you ask me. And it's even got the, looks like titanium deposition coating on it as well. Now this paint job is not titanium deposition coating, but they've matched that line guide to the color scheme of the Black Knight. So that's pretty cool, but it's not quite as triangle as the lingual, but it is damn close to a T-wing line guide. And in fact, let's take a look at the Alpha's Air T-wing and look at the Black Knight 2 line guide. They're getting closer to that T-wing. I wouldn't be surprised if China does come out with its own exact copy of DAIWA's T-wing sometime in the future. They are getting close. Okay, so now that I've shown you guys all the specs and the cool features of this reel, it's time to get to the meat and potatoes, and we're going to get a weight on this spool, and I'm going to show you exactly why I bought this reel. Okay, so of course before we get the spool weight, we're going to get a reel weight, and if you recall on the box, they claim that this reel is going to weigh 4.76 ounces or 135 grams. So what does the scale say? 4.8. So a little bit heavier than they claimed, but still I'll take it. So 4.8 ounces. Now previously the lightest Chinese BFS reel that I had was the PW100, which came in at 4.89, so it's actually a little bit heavier. I thought it was lighter than that. 4.88. But yeah, so this is officially the lightest Chinese BFS reel that I have, and I have quite a few. So compared to some of its other Chinese competition, like the GH100, 5.6, the Spirit Fox, 5.7, the Zephyr, 5.68, and even the new generation reels like the Clamber Hyper Micro, 5.3, and of course the Lingual, 5.5. So it is noticeably lighter than all the other Chinese reels except for the PW100. But that puts it in company with these reels, the Shimano ALDEBARAN BFS, which comes in at 4.7. Interesting, this thing is supposed to weigh 4.6 ounces. And Abu Garcia's REVO LTX BF8, which actually comes in at 4.6 ounces, but it's supposed to weigh 4.5 ounces. But that makes it lighter than DAIWA's Alpha's Air, which comes in at 5.6 ounces. Now, of course, these JDM reels have metal frames, but still, the Black Knight 2 coming in at under 5 ounces is in some rare company. Now let's get on to the spool. Okay, so as you can see, the spool scales out, and let's get into the heart of this Black Knight 2 reel, and that of course is going to be the spool. To get to the spool, you just flip this latch, you twist the side plate down, and check this out. Take a look in there. That is a hybrid ceramic orange seal bearing. And I believe, yep, the other spool bearing is also a hybrid ceramic orange seal bearing. So the spool bearings on the Black Knight 2, they are hybrid ceramics stock. So that's another feature that you're going to get with this Black Knight 2 reel. But let's take a look at this spool for a second here. It's got this nice purple color. It's shallow. It's got a long spool shaft that looks to be made of aluminum. But that bearing there is very, very small. It looks like it's way smaller than a standard spool bearing. And yeah, it might be a micro bearing, but the one in the side plate looks to be a standard bearing. But I could be wrong. I'll have to inspect that a little bit closer. So yeah, after taking a closer look at the side plate spool bearing, it looks to be about the same size as the spool shaft bearing. So that makes both of these spool bearings smaller than standard, which are probably going to have micro balls. So that's pretty cool. You get a set of hybrid ceramic micro spool bearings as standard on the Black Knight 2. Check out the porting in the center there. But let's not beat around the bush anymore and get a weight on this spool. According to the website, it's supposed to weigh 6.9 grams with the bearing. Okay, wow. 6.436. Yep, 6.436 with the bearing. Now it's kind of funny, there's a picture on the website of the store I bought it from where the bearing was like 6.8 grams. So that is crazy. 6.46 gram spool with the bearing. So of course, you know, I'm going to take that bearing off and see what the true rotational mass is. Okay, so the spool bearing is off, and this spool could potentially be the first stock spool on a BFS reel that weighs under 6 grams. Now of course the bearing is tiny, it's not a standard bearing, but let's find out. Damn, 5.56 gram spool, fellas. That is freaking amazing. So the significance of this is, by comparison, this is the spool of the Abu Garcia REVO LTX BF8. Taking the spool bearing off, and this is the lightest spool that I've ever weighed so far for a stock BFS reel, and it's coming in at 6.02 grams. And more importantly, this is the spool of the DAIWA Alpha's Air TW. Taking the spool bearing off of this, and this spool weighs 6.19 grams. So this is the lightest spool of any stock BFS reel in history so far, and it's by a pretty significant margin as well. Because half a gram on a BFS spool is quite a lot. Look at that, 5.55 grams. So by comparison, its rivals like the Shanghai Lingle and the Clamber Hyper Micro, they have spools in the 6.1 to 6.3 gram range that I've weighed. So it looks like with this reel, China is really being serious about taking down the top JDM BFS reels. But this is not the only reason why I bought the Black Knight 2. The other reason is that this spool is supposed to only be 30 millimeters. And the significance of that is that the big deal about DAIWA's Alpha's Air TW spool was not really that it was super light, since the REVO spool was lighter, but it was super small, 28 millimeters in diameter, which allowed this thing to cast a 1 gram trout magnet with, half a spool line with pretty much zero effort, really good distance and accuracy. So now we have a spool that's over half a gram lighter and almost the same diameter. So this reel could potentially be the best casting reel out of the box for a trout magnet. But of course we're going to test that theory. Now, compared to the spool of the REVO LTX BF8, which is 32 millimeters, you can see the big size difference there. And then when you compare it to the size of the average BFS reel from AliExpress, it is tiny by comparison. Now, the average spool size for reels like the GH100, the Zephyr, even the spool of the Shanghai Lingle, which I have here, is about 34 to 35 millimeters. So yeah, this Black Knight spool, while it's not quite as tiny as the Alpha's Air TW spool, that 0.7 gram weight difference should make up for it, hopefully. And another good thing is that they have went with Shimano's FTB style dynamic brake system, and they have shrunk it down in order to fit the smaller diameter spool, as you can see. Now the only question is, will these brakes be strong enough? Because Roar Fishing said he felt that the brakes on his Black Knight 1 were not strong enough. So let's examine this brake system real quick. So now it's on a little bit over 0, so we're going to turn these brakes all the way up to the maximum position, and let's see if these bank of magnets are spring loaded. Now they look pretty flush to the, I guess, brake hub here, but yep, spring loaded on that side, spring loaded on that side. So yeah, this is I guess a miniaturized version of the fake FTB system that they use on a lot of the AliExpress BFS reels. So by comparison, if you take a look at the brake hub of the Shanghai Lingle, you can see that is noticeably bigger. Now previously I said that the Shanghai Lingle might give us a preview of what future Shimano BFS reels would be like, but I think the Black Knight 2 is actually going to be that reel, because I'm pretty sure Shimano is not only going to lighten their spools, they are probably going to shrink them as well in order to keep up with the castability of DAIWA's air reels with the super lightweight lures. But that's just speculation by me, I could be wrong. Okay, so I'm going to do a kind of an impromptu test of the braking system on this Black Knight 2, just so we can kind of get a feel to see if they're going to be strong or weak. Now I've set the spool tension to just minimize side-to-side play. And it's actually just a hair of side-to-side movement there, which is perfect for a BFS reel. Gonna turn the brakes down to their minimum position, which is 0. And let's see how the spool spins. And that's actually pretty impressive for a lightweight spool to spin that long. I can definitely feel and hear the ceramic hybrid bearings in there. Alright, so let's turn the brakes all the way up to the maximum position, and let's see what happens now. So not even 3 seconds. So it went from about a 10 to 12 second free spool on minimum brakes to just barely over 2 seconds. So far so good on these brakes, but of course we're not going to know until we get out on the water. Okay guys, so I'll have to admit that I really wasn't that excited about ordering the Black Knight reel, but once I got it and once we broke it down and looked at all the specs and weighed everything, The only thing I can say about this reel is wow. It really exceeded my expectations, at least on paper. So that brings us to the price. Now, this is another one of those reels like the Shanghai Lingle that is more expensive than your average $50 to $60 BFS reel from AliExpress. This reel retails for $79.99 or pretty much $80. And I believe the only place you can get it now that I can see on AliExpress is the store called The Time. And I'm going to leave a link to where you can buy this Black Knight reel in the comments section. And we're going to talk about The Time a little bit more here towards the end of the video. But do I believe that this reel is worth $80? And the resounding answer is, of course I do. I mean, let's just go over what we found out. So we found out that it has the lightest stock BFS spool of any reel, and it's not even close. The nearest competitor has a spool that's like half a gram heavier. We found out that the spool is only 30 millimeters in diameter, so the spool alone, in my opinion, is worth that $80. But let's not forget that it's got the hybrid ceramic spool bearing stock that appear to be micro already, so no need to spend money to upgrade. The imitation Shimano FTB braking system. Now, while it may not be as polished as an original FTB system from Shimano, it's still copying the best magnetic brake system in the world. Now, don't forget it's got clicking everything, clicking drag star, clicking spool tension, and clicking drag itself. It's got super trick components like the carbon fiber handle, the imitation DAIWA knobs. It's got the very detailed star drag, and don't forget the titanium coated oversized line guide that looks almost like a T-wing. And top it off with the fact that this reel is under 5 ounces, super comfortable, very small and compact, and it's sporting the cool iridescent rainbow style paint job. I think this is probably the biggest BFS bargain of all time so far. Now hopefully this reel won't disappoint me out on the water, because what I'm going to do next is it's going to go straight into battle up against the Alpha's AirTW casting a trout magnet. Now if you're wondering why I would fish a trout magnet on a bait caster, well, the obvious answer of course is to catch trout. The trout magnet will catch trout when all other lures, even live bait, will not, I've found out. And if I can do it on a bait caster, then I'm going to do it on a bait caster. Now so far there's only 2 reels that I've caught trout on using a trout magnet, and one of them is this reel right here, the Alpha's AirTW, and then the other one is my super tuned Shimano ALDEBARAN with the aftermarket Avail spool. So yeah, as soon as I can, I'm gonna take these 2 reels out on the water and do a side-by-side casting comparison, casting the sub 1 gram trout magnet. And we will see if the Black Knight 2 will live up to all its impressive specs. So to end this video off, I'm gonna give you guys a preview of what's to come as far as bait finesse content on my channel. Now the store on AliExpress called The Time recently contacted me, and they wanted me to test out a spool that they have for the ALDEBARAN BFS, and here it is right here. They sent me a little care package that had a couple other things, and of course this DIY chameleon spool for the ALDEBARAN. And this spool is different than any other aftermarket spool for the ALDEBARAN that I've seen so far, so be on the lookout for that. Next, the Shanghai Lingle we saw could easily cast and fish a 1.5 gram lure with no problem, but we're going to see how it does with, I guess, regular weight BFS lures. I'm talking a 1/16 of an ounce upwards to 1/8 of an ounce, and of course I'm going to put this thing through a cast battle up against a top performing JDM BFS reel. So once again, be on the lookout for that. Now I also recently took the Clamber Hyper Micro out to the field, and we did a cast measurement test between the stock bearings and some ceramic hybrid micro bearings. Now since I did it in the field, this is going to include measurements and all, And I also took the time to put this reel through a measured cast battle up against a $300 JDM BFS reel. And you definitely don't want to miss out on those results. Now, last but not least, I've been informed by Japan Lure Shop that this reel is going to be coming out at the end of the month. So hopefully my pre-order will ship out soon after. And that is, I guess, the saltwater braid tune version of the Alpha's Air TW. And as you can see, it looks way better than the Alphas. And I've only seen one person on YouTube, some Japanese guy of course, with one of these reels testing it out. And it looked pretty impressive. So needless to say, I cannot wait until my pre-order comes in. And of course, I'm going to share that with you guys. Alright guys, so needless to say, this Black Knight 2 reel has shocked me like no other, and hopefully the weather will permit me to take this reel out and battle the Alpha's Air TW next weekend. Alright guys, thanks a lot.